All right. Welcome back to Relationship Remix, everyone. I'm your host and guide, Ari Kardosh, and I'm so excited that today I get to welcome the amazing Erin Kleinerman. Erin is a phenomenal coach, amongst many other things, here in Bali. And I have had the pleasure of working with him and his partner, Chantel Raven. And it's just been so amazing to learn from you both. And I'm excited that you are here with us today. So, Erin, would you just tell us a little bit about you and who you are and what you're passionate about?
Absolutely. Yeah, great to be here on your show and what you're creating. And for me, I have a passion in human behavior and really understanding why we're on this journey and what this human flesh suit is all about. In my early 20s, I did a master's in spiritual psychology and really started to ask the bigger questions of why are we here and why does this life matter and why do I get up. Background before that was as a ship's captain. So I spent years working out at sea navigating ships. So I often say I went from navigating ships to navigating souls, i.e., the
I
soul
love it.
navigator.
Every time you say that, I'm like, so effing cool.
Yeah, and the what I saw consistently in my early 20s, I worked a lot in the personal development field. I worked for a self-development publishing company supporting people to share their stories around thank God I was raped and thank God my son died and thank God I was molested and thank God I grew up in chaos, which was my own story. And what I saw was that a lot of people understood concepts in the brain, and this was also with me, but there was a differentiation between what I understood here and where my actions in my body and what my cells in my body knew. And I saw this a lot. I'm sure many of you can relate. You hear somebody speaking on stage and they're saying all these great concepts and ideas and amazing things, but then their life dictates something else. And what my journey eventually led me was into the field of Tantra, into the field of something, a place, a container, a lineage that allowed the totality of the human experience to be completely recognized and felt. And,
Mm.
often when people say the word Tantra, they think, oh, that's just like sex parties and orgies, right?
Sounds like fun. Let's go.
Let's go. All right. What is it? Tell me more. Yeah, and it was like, okay, well, I recognize that sexuality is just as important as emotionality and as important as consciousness, as important as the heart. So I found myself in a field and with teachers that recognize the totality of all of that, and I started to integrate my sexuality and my emotions and my heart and my mind. And that's really where I find the most passion is supporting people to master the human experience and to master all the different caveats that we move through so that we can actually, at the core of all of that, awaken the essence of our soul. And when we awaken the essence of our soul, we get to live in joy. And one of the greatest teachers for doing all of that is relationship, because in relationship, there's nowhere to run, there's nowhere to hide, there's nothing you can go behind. It's all there, as you know well.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I love it. It's so juicy. I love how you're like, master the totality of our soul. I'm like, oh my God. And I'd say it's such big, deep work. And it doesn't always have to feel like that big, deep work all the time.
Mhm.
But there's so
Mhm.
much juiciness there. Mm,
Mm.
so good.
Yeah, and it's like it doesn't, and that's it's like the most profound is the most simple. And what I find, and one of the reasons I love, so much in the last 2.5 years, Raven and I, our work, our life, our romance has all come together, is one of the big things for her that was also very important for me was like integrating and applying concepts into life. I'm sure many of
Mm.
you listening or yourself, Ari, like you go to a retreat and you get this like week-long peak high, or you go to a Tony Robbins weekend. It's like, yes, I'm gonna conquer the world, and then you enter back Monday morning. You're like, fuck, what do I
Oh my
do?
God.
Oh, shit, what's going on here? So it's like what is really important for me is teaching people to fish, not giving them fish. I don't want to give people peak experiences that blow open their whole being, and then they're like, I am. incredible, I am infinite, I am all that, but then how do I live and breathe in society and in life? And this is something that's
Yes.
really passionate for me. So,
Yes. And exactly, exactly. So
yeah.
that is really where I want to hone in. Like, I'm sure that in 50 minutes you get everybody on this high. You don't need a whole week. I know you.
Uh-huh.
But really, it's like, how do we take and just find, how do we apply intimacy in new ways in our everyday life, especially when it comes to being sexual, being in our own sexuality, being with somebody else and theirs, meeting this beautiful place, especially if there's a lot of old wounds or just like meh, you know, how do we come back to this place and be curious again or find connection? That's what yeah,
Yeah,
talk to me.
yeah, yeah. Connection, there's so many different caveats of connection and sexuality. And, as people who are just being introduced to sexuality, one of the things I want to say is sexuality is a healing modality, meaning that the essence of us being able to have this conversation right now means at some point mom and dad and for both you and I came together, sperm and egg met and created life. So sexuality, conscious sexuality, when it's done with awareness and you have a space of connecting more deeply with yourself and another, it has the power to create life. So it's not an energy that we just want to take lightly. And there's very simple ways of bringing a deeper intimacy into the bedroom, into the boardroom, into your day-to-day life. And really, it starts more than anything with your relationship with yourself. And what I found was that I knew how to pleasure women really well, and it was great. But all I kept doing is being in a man's body was I was taking basically my own feminine essence and projecting it onto a woman and loving her and adoring her, but then forgetting about myself. So I'll say the first tip or tool inside of deeper intimacy with another is finding deeper intimacy with the self. And that deeper intimacy with the
Oof.
self doesn't necessarily just mean like you go and masturbate every day. It means like you look yourself in the mirror and you're like, like wow, this body, this being, these rolls at my belly, all parts of me, I can begin to love. And if I don't love them, then I can start to find ways to nurture that more. Because the place with intimacy and connection is that anything that's unloved inside of me is going to be projected in one shape or form onto another. So our relationship has a resource and a tool to reflect any parts of us that we haven't been willing to love on and appreciate inside of ourselves. So that's why the first step is always self-love, because it has to come to a place of, can I actually love myself? But if I can't love myself, how can I expect someone else to know how to love me?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, amen. Oh my gosh. I was just reflecting on, I remember a personal anecdote. Right after I'd had our second child, I just, like, boobs, not interested in having anybody else touch them. They were so fed up with being a tool for food. They just weren't feeling sexy anymore. And I remember just feeling like, oh, this stinks. This, like, I just don't like my breasts. And then I remember I was talking to another friend of mine who does like Taoist sexual stuff practices, and she's like, oh, can I do something with you? And I was like, sure. She's like, it's gonna be weird. I'm like, you know me, let's be weird, let's try this. And she's like, okay, grab your boobs and we're just gonna do the happy booby dance, and it's like, it's a Taoist practice or something like that. And so next thing I know, she's like, just grab your boobs and start laughing and jumping with them. And I'm like, this is so weird. And she and I were just like doing this and we're cracking up, and it started like something in me just clicked of like, I have been loathing these
Mm,
things, right? I've been like, I once had a healthy relationship and now I
mhm,
don't. And I didn't even notice how deep in the story I just been disconnecting myself. And it was like, how do you even begin to start to shift that mindset around these different parts of ourselves that are maybe not the things that we love, but it's even taking the time to start to
mm,
look at them and to have that awareness of like, this is a part of me that I do love. This is a part of me that I need to work on a little bit and lean into. And the more and what has been really fascinating on my own journey is the more I've come back into relationship with my own breasts, the more my breasts have received more pleasure from other people, right? From my husband. It's like, okay, there's more possible when you're more accepting of yourself. We don't even understand that, because I think so much of our mainstream cultural training is my pleasure is at the whim of someone
Mm,
else, right?
mhm.
Like I'm waiting for my prince or princess charming to appear and ravish me, and then I will be happy, right? So it is so beautiful. I love that this whole week has been about like how to be in a relationship. First, you're in a relationship with yourself. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, and you remind me, it's like how many people, obviously probably more pre-COVID times, go out to a bar and they're expecting to meet somebody who's going to know how to pleasure them better than themselves. I'm going to find the one out there. Where is it? I'm looking, I'm searching. Maybe she's the one. Maybe he's the one. It's like no, the one starts here. And one of the very fundamental points in Tantra is this unification of the masculine polarity, the masculine principle, and the feminine principle. Basically, all that means is that I'm in a male body, but inside of me, there's a feminine essence. You're in a female body, inside of you, there's a masculine essence. That is a relationship that actually creates one. So, for somebody who's like wanting to meet their partner or wanting to find the love of their life and manifest their ideal being, it's like the first piece to that is actually looking yourself in the mirror, and the person you're going to wake up with and go to bed with every day for the rest of your life in this human flesh suit is this being. Yes, you might have a beautiful beloved who you share a relationship with for 5, 10, 20, 50 years, whatever it may be, but you're actually still waking up in this singularity vessel. And when you can love that and you can actually have your cup overflowing from the love and the unification and the union that's inside of you, then there's that much more to give. But if this cup isn't full and you're waiting to find the one that's out there looking, then you're going to be seeking and searching the rest of your life. And that was such a
Mm.
big lesson for me in my relationship. My last partner, long-term partner before Raven, like I remember she left me in a hotel room in Egypt crying like I was at this like come to God moment, and I was just cried for hours and hours and hours, and it was like finally towards about maybe two-thirds of the way to the tears I felt this essence of my own feminine coming like back to me, this concepts I had understood in my brain about unification and equanimity, and oh yeah, I was like, and then this essence came to me and was like, hey, I'm right here. There's nobody's left you. Love hasn't left the door. Love has been here the whole time. And that was such a starting journey for me of really like deepening in my own inner union is the way I would say it. And what was beautiful, that was, happened for about, another 2.5, 3 years. And then Raven came into my life, another being who really was fostered and grounded in her own inner union. So it was like one of the things that I like to talk about in relationships to have deeper intimacy is that what actually supports it is two beings who are in their own sacred union. And when two
Mm.
beings are in their own sacred union, meaning masculine and feminine dancing inside of themselves, then it creates a place of interdependency rather than codependency. And we all know,
Mm.
anyone who's been in relationship, we know one of the things that we suffer the most with, especially with intimacy, is this codependency. We're codependently needing our partner to love us, to pleasure us, to care for us. And it's like, can I return that mirror and know my own inner union? And then I can then manifest and be attracted to somebody who knows that as well. And there's a whole world of possibility that we enter when that's on the table.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I totally feel you. That makes so much sense. Oh, and so Aaron, my this is so beautiful. And I'm like, yes, philosophically, this sounds amazing. I love this. Let's like let me just find my inner union, my inner masculine and feminine, and just have them go into deep romantic dance and go off into the sunset, and then all of my relationships will be perfect with other humans going forward. And how the heck do you actually apply this?
Great question. For me, in being in a male body, what I know especially in the place of intimacy and connection, is being more in a penetrative, like certainty when I'm meeting. Like I love, especially in the bedroom, to be more in that masculine polarity. So that masculine polarity means that, actually the my lingam, my penis, my cock grows, so I actually have a something that penetrates a being, and a woman has a yoni which receives. So the very nature of masculine and feminine is a penetrative presence and a receptive presence. So the way to answer your question, the way that I began to foster a deeper relationship inside was to start to feel into the places where I can be more receptive, and to start to grow more in the places of where you could say more feminine characteristics. And so that place is where I've been able to grow more and more in my own feminine. And again, a great reflective place for doing that is in relationships. Like a very clear example, often in relationships, one of the things that takes away intimacy is when both individuals aren't having a healthy emotional body. And so the feminine being, the female body, often because she's more feeling everything, she's like this receptive vehicle that feels life pulsing through her body. Men are much more singular focused. We're like, we come to nothingness, we come to stillness. So in relationship, I can utilize the place of her receptivity as well as her emotional body as a chance to reflect anything inside of me that I haven't been willing to feel. And when I reflect anything inside of me that I haven't been willing to feel, then I can actually begin to grow up. So, what that looks like in a very foundational format is anything inside of me that I am negating, that, like, if you're in a relationship and your partner's always like an angry wild bitch, it's like that's usually, and you're like, stop being angry, and you start to run from that, speaking mainly a lot to male bodies, then there's an opportunity to say, wow, what is she reflecting that I am, or what is she expressing that I am suppressing? And that
Mm.
very foundational principle is to then look at it, have a reflective nature, have a receptive nature that says, oh, maybe I can begin to express a lot of the anger and frustration that I've never had a chance to do, which I
Mm.
think the emotional body is an absolutely fundamental piece for a deeper integration. And, my journey with that was having a lot of anger towards my mom in the conditions I grew up with as a child, and then having a lot of partners in my life that in arguments would become an angry bitch. And I was like, I'm not that way. Something's wrong with them. Nothing's wrong with me. Something's wrong with them. Maybe I need to go find someone else. And then we find someone else. And then it's the same thing. Whoa, something's wrong with them. Nothing's wrong with me. And it's like that saying, no matter where you go, there you are.
Uh-huh.
So wherever you go, you're a piece of the equation. So many times that, I'm sure you can reflect something similar. Like you're having conversations with people who reach out for coaching and they're like, yeah, it's just I see the same pattern over and over in my partners, and that something must be wrong with them. It's like, well, okay, where's your piece in the equation? Where's your piece in the pie?
Yeah, I've talked about this so many times. It's like we somehow we all, maybe not all, many of us have grown up with this idea that there's one pie, right? And I am probably responsible for like 20%, maybe, but 80% is definitely their fault.
Mhm,
Whereas if we split it into like maybe there are two pies and you're 100% responsible for your pie and they're 100% responsible for their pie, let's take a look what's actually there. It just opens the door for so much more empowerment and like, oh, wow, what can I be responsible for so I can create the thing that I want, this connection that I want, the intimacy that I want.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, and that responsibility means that we utilize all of the people in our life for our growth and evolution. The
Mm.
responsibility comes in the place of what specific characteristic am I getting triggered by that I'm creating a story around, and can I take that characteristic and own it back to myself? Can I take that characteristic and own it back into my own being in a way that actually is going to deepen my capacity to be in my wholeness? to be in
Mm,
my integration, to be in my fullness, rather than the place of like blaming, shaming, and condemning anything that makes me feel awkward, strange, or not right. And this
mm,
really is where the rubber meets the road. And actions, the day-to-day actions that we take, one of the things that I absolutely recommend to people is taking time every morning to have some inner reflection, to have a moment to, if
yeah.
there's emotions coming through, let them express. If there's writing that wants to come through, let it express. Let yourself be a vehicle for spirit to move through you. And when you're doing that, then the quality of the individuals that you're going to attract are going to be on a similar resonance. But if you're denying your emotions, denying your sexuality, reaching for 2 to 3 second quick orgasmic releases, then you're naturally often going to attract partners who are in a similar framework as that.
Yeah. Yeah. Aaron, you talked about as a more masculine person that you found this way to be more receptive, to really have that more inner union. What about somebody who's more feminine bodied? What can I do to be more with my masculine, more penetrative? Like, what does that look like?
Well, I would say, one of the things I see a lot of, and it's a funny little piece, is like women who are very powerful and they're masculine and they're good business leaders. They're like, I'm in my masculine and I'm leading in the world. And can't you see me? I'm wearing my suit and jacket and I get my big dick in my pants and I'm getting some fun in the world. And these
Oh
women.
yeah,
Like,
I've
yeah,
been
it's
that woman.
and my reflection to that is like what the world doesn't need is female bodies trying to lead from their masculinity. And I
Mm,
say that in a very strong way because to do that in a healthy format, it means that a woman has to begin to own more of her healthy masculine characteristics so that she can actually get to a point to lead more from the mystery. Nothing turns me on more seeing a woman that is leading from her feminine intuition, her creativity, her connection, her receptive capacity to feel the world around. And
mm,
often the women I see that are doing that have a much more healthy, integrated masculine presence. But often women who are trying to, be a good leader, they're stepping into masculine energy and they're trying to have power over rather than
mm,
power with. And they're
yeah.
trying to have power over because that's what they think, that's what they've been showed from a lot of the conscious masculine leadership that they've observed. So it's not their fault. That's just what they've observed along the way. So the
Yeah.
differentiating factor here is where a woman can actually start to foster more of her capacity to penetrate with presence and love. And
Mm,
there's, that penetrating with love and presence, you could say is a bit more of a darker quality that often is associated to, abuse, turmoil, power over, etc. So it takes more capacity for a female body to start to learn how that feels. And the way that she does that is to lean into the uncomfortable places where maybe she's not necessarily always speaking her voice or, afraid to share her desires or afraid to communicate her
mm,
boundaries. So first being able to communicate in the moments of uncomfortability, and then as you're developing that masculine more and more, you're building your capacity to witness without judgment.
mm,
Because the feminine, she sees something and she's like, oh my God, and she feels it all. And we love that. We love how much life force the female body feels. And I love that. Like Raven is the most alive, opinionated, like crazy being that I've ever spent my days with. And I love that. But what I also really appreciate her, and especially her masculine power, is that there is a deepened essence within her that has a capacity to witness, have a more meditative capacity to witness the world around without that need to get impacted emotionally. So what
mm,
we're doing here is we're dancing on this line between I want to let myself feel everything deeply and completely, and then I also want to notice my capacity to observe without judgment. and to
Mm.
witness without judgment the world that's circulating in front of me.
Oh, so juicy. So
Hmm.
juicy. Ah, okay. I'm like, yes, I could go on this forever. And a couple different things are coming up for me. One, one that I just want to lean into that I wish I would have leaned into a little bit more towards the beginning is one of the things I've noticed in, especially in the Tantra world, is there's a lot about men versus women. And I just want to
Mhm.
highlight that I really appreciate that you're talking about masculine and masculine energy and feminine energy, and that we all have it within us. And especially for me and my queer community, and just being here and just saying, hey, we all have it within us. And so I just want to call that out and say that it doesn't matter what, in my opinion, at least, it doesn't matter what your body parts are. We're all everything. And being able to dance with all of the energies is really beautiful and important. And I think that's really the essence of it, is like, how do you call in these different parts of yourself and have the healing, have the union be there for this dance. So I just want to say thank you for speaking about in those terms a lot. Other thing I wanted to lean into is how does this apply? How do these beautiful principles apply if we're taking them now to finding more physical connection with our beloved?
Hmm. Mhm. Well, to create more physical connection with your beloved means that, you slow down enough to feel the nuances of connection. A very kind of more fundamental piece within Tantra is we get to slow down to feel everything. So often, when two people come together to make love, to have sex, there's often a racing towards an agenda based place of where they want to get their clit orgasm and they're going to rub this particular way and the man's going to get off and they're both going to have their 5 or 10 minutes of sexual bliss and then they turn their backs to each other and go to sleep. For me, that's often about probably 90% of the way in which humans have sexual intercourse. And it's not that that's bad. It's good that they're actually coming together. But the way to deepen physical intimacy and connection is to slow down enough to see the beautiful essence of the beloved in front of you. And that doesn't mean you need to make love for 10 hours, but what it means is that you slow down enough to just really feel every little piece of that interaction. And you also feel and you utilize sexual energy as a way to deepen in the heart space and deepen in the place of where connection happens. And I want to kind of frame another concept that often is the reason why physical flesh intimacy is not necessarily happen. Because when a man and woman comes together, and I'll speak in a much more kind of man woman concept here. It's like a man or masculine energy, you could say even more, often gets turned on quite quickly. So it's like immediate erection, and then this man is assuming that based upon the same reflective principle that I'm turned on and erect, she must be as well. Let me take my fingers, immediately go towards her yoni, and try to stimulate her. And
Pause.
because
Anybody who doesn't know, yoni is vulva. Okay,
yes,
vulva.
vulva,
Yes,
pussy, vagina.
pussy.
So here is this place where the man is then going towards the woman's yoni or pussy, and because of our sexual education has often only become from religious, which is abstinence, and porn, which is like a woman should be ready and wet within 30 seconds and ready to take a big hard cock. It's like that so many women have that mindset of, okay, I should probably be wet right now. Let me, instead of letting my body warm up, just try to go into sexual intercourse. So often a man is penetrating a woman way before she's ready. And so what happens then for a woman's body is she's never actually had the capacity to feel the potential of her orgasmic bliss.
Mm.
So over time, that creates this resentful place inside of the connection, which then a woman actually doesn't even want physical intimacy anymore because part of it is probably hurting her body. Her man isn't listening to her. She's not listening to herself. So what does it do? It's like it creates more and more separation. And then often when the erotic energy has gotten so high, they come back together, have their quickie again, and then they both get disappointed, then they separate again. It's like that's the reality for probably 90% of couples, unfortunately. So a foundation to create more deeper intimacy means that a man understands that he might get erect first and be quite turned on, but he has to learn how to increase the erotic potential and the stimulus for a woman. So he doesn't go straight to the nipples. He doesn't go straight to the vagina. He begins to warm up her body from the outside going in. And as the
Mm.
body warms out from the outside going in, she can become the 2, 3, 5 hour lover that you've always wanted. But if you're going straight at a yoni, she either needs to learn her capacity to speak her boundaries and say no, and you as a man, as a man have to learn that okay, I might get aroused quite quickly, and as much as I might want a quickie that I watched in porn, 586 times when I was 14, that means that I actually need to slow the fuck down and let her body warm up. And when you let her body warm up, you enter a whole other world of possibility where intimacy, connection, physical bodies utilize sexual energy to clear away anything that's not love. All
Mm.
of the fear, all of the resentment, all the stuff. And you're just there and you're riding the peaks and the valleys, and the peaks and the valleys. And huge tip, take away the agenda. Meaning, one of the great ways for a man to be multi orgasmic is that he has a healthy connection to his emotional body and he has a healthy desire not to ejaculate, meaning that has started to know that orgasm can exist far beyond a 2 or 3 second sneeze into a moment that lasts for minutes, for hours, where the whole body is like, and you're actually transmuting that sexual energy through all the cells of your body, and you're creating an intimacy that your mind could never even conceive.
Yeah, I just want to pause because there are probably people here who have not heard of ejaculation control. And yeah, so I just want to pause and say, this is a thing. This is a real thing that people can do that you never hear about. That you never hear about in mainstream. You never hear about, like, porn obviously doesn't. It's all about the cum shot, right? So it's like, but there's this thing that you can learn to do with your body. And it's been, honestly, when I heard about, I probably heard about this maybe 2 years ago, because the world of sex and intimacy that I come from is more along porn and kink. Like, that is my background and I love it. And there is a
Mm-hmm.
very different focus on what you're doing. And then we get to Bali and we start diving deeper into sexuality and other modalities. And I learn, and we start hearing about, yeah, like, men actually can control their ejaculation. And I'm like, why would you ever want to do that? Like, that's like the best part, right? Like, why wouldn't you? And then watching, I'm gonna just out him because I think he'll be fine with that, but watching Jamin along his journey of learning about this and practicing this and really making it a practice, and watching his pleasure just like skyrocket, and watch our pleasure just expand for, like, beyond what I ever dreamed was possible. And it's so cool. And I'm not going to say it's all just because he doesn't, like, he holds his semen in, right? It's not just that. It's so much deeper than that. But I just, for anybody who's listening that's like, what did Aaron just say? Like, don't come all over her, right? It's like, it's different. It's different. And it's so cool. And if you want to know more, I'm sure, Aaron, you teach all this stuff. So
Yeah, yeah. And I love that you bring that forward because still like, it's such a concept that is quite, wow, isn't that the goal? And then the other piece of that is that women have been so ingrained to that. They feel like, and I'm sure women listening to this right now, like, I want to break a mold for you. You don't need to make the man come to make it feel like you've done a good job. There's
mm.
such an ingrained piece that's alive inside of women that it's like, oh my God, if he didn't come, I've been a bad partner and he hasn't had the sex that he needs or that he wants,
Mm.
or and now oh my God, it's like no, the there there's no requirements for healthy sexuality. If either neither one of you don't have an orgasm, it's okay. If he doesn't enter you, if you feel like your body's not open, then say it. Don't expect him to understand, because at the end of the day, male bodies were pretty fucking dumb. Like we're pretty just not when it comes to these things. I'm gonna put it on the table because I teach this stuff. I live and breathe in this world, and still there's times when it's like, I have hard on. I want to be inside. Why not now? That's like my Neolithic brain that's like, oh, what is wrong? I touch yoni. It's like, and so it's this other whole part that takes over the brain that have patience with men, and men just recognize not your own stupidity, but your own place of where patterns have come into place and start to break the pattern down. And by breaking the pattern down, you can come into more loving care and sensuality with yourself, and you can then give so much more, like to your partner. One of the modules in I have this course called the Conscious Man's Guide to the Bedroom, and one of the modules in there is like getting rid of the performer, because every man wants to be a performer. And I gave her the orgasm of her life and watched her convulse for days, and it was the best thing. Pat on the back, good job. And yes, that's all beautiful. But when you actually get rid of your need to perform, that's actually when true performance sets in.
Mm, that's beautiful. And
Mm.
it's really interesting for me because I actually, like, I'm just gonna own, I'm actually not very good at speaking into like more of the feminine experience, because I think my sexuality has been like, if you look at the erotic blueprints, like Jaya's erotic blueprints, I'm a sexual kinky, like historically. And so that puts me, if you were to be like, here's a whole room full of humans, everybody who identifies as sexual kinky or sexual over here, and people who are more sensual or energetic, like go over here. For the most part, what I see is the women go over there and the men go over there, and I'm there with the guys, and I'm like, fuck. So it's really interesting because like everything you're saying, I'm like, no, that's me. That's me. Like I just want, yeah, like yeah, I'm a performancer. Like, I want to put on the show. I'm like, oh yeah, to be in that space and also have gotten to experience what it's like to slow things down and to be with everything that's present and to not be goal oriented has been a challenge for me. And it's been really beautiful on my own journey to see like there's so much juiciness in this thing that that I was so afraid of. Right. Like I was like, but then
Mhm.
what? Like this is
Mhm.
the mecca, right? This is where I'm going towards. And you're saying don't like run there immediately. Okay, now what? And stepping back and slowing things down and not looking for how like masterfully can I get him off in 2 minutes, right? Is really different, and it's really cool. And I love what you said about with warming the feminine up, because I'm really learning a lot about this right now too, starting from the outside and moving in. And what about for the masculine?
Mm.
Do I start
Well,
right at the
for the
cock and bull?
masculine
What
in
do I
general, well, yeah, I mean, for the masculine in general, like again, into these polarities, a woman's yoni opens when her heart opens.
do?
A man's heart opens when his cock and his sexuality is turned on. So really, we're
Mm,
working with two complete polar opposites here. So a man actually, like in the throes of lovemaking, often has these amazing heart-opening experiences where he's like, "Wow, I'm connected to God." Like the first time I witnessed and could feel an essence of God in lovemaking was seeing it in the eyes of my beloved and just seeing, wow, okay, here is God, like in me and her and in existence. And for a woman, her heart has to be open for before really the deepest waters of her vulva, of her yoni, of her pussy begin to flow. So
mm,
that means that turning on all of her outside body where she before entering, what I long for is a woman's like, please enter me now. Don't wait another second. I need you inside me now. And in that moment, I can feel her waters flowing. Then it's like, okay, she's ready. But if I'm like trying to force myself inside of her, she's getting stuck up in her voice and can't communicate no. So she's just saying yes because she doesn't want to make me feel bad. I'm entering her, then it's like the energy capacity there isn't as powerful. So
Yes.
what that means is that the masculine turn on is often initially at his cock. So a lot of what happens in relationship is that a man is longing for sex because then he knows unconsciously that his heart's going to open there. A woman
Mm,
doesn't want to go for sex because her whole body isn't being turned on, so it just creates more and more separation. You know, I laugh. Often Raven will say to women, she's just like, just go give him a fucking blowjob sometimes. And like, not from like a place of like, pushing down a woman and you're gonna go do that, but it's like that's often what will open a man's heart. If she wants his heart to be more open, his sex opens first. And
mm,
for on the other side, if a man wants a woman to really have, longer lovemaking and more connected and really to feel a deeper intimacy, then tease her whole body. Put a 45-minute timer on, put a 30-minute timer on, and just, put her on the bed and touch every single cell of her body except her nipples and her yoni for 30 to 45 minutes. And then write me a message and let me know if she's not turned on. If she's not turned on, guarantee you that might be other issues inside of that. We can, but if you're just literally being 100% present with her, touching every part of her body, maybe little circles around her nipples, letting her all of her juices start to get wild, and then you look at her and say, "Oh, would you like me to touch your yoni now, your pussy?" Most likely, 95% of the time, she's ready at that point. But give that time where you're giving her your 100% undivided attention, stroking her body gently, giving safety, creating safety. Safety is what builds intimacy. When safety is present, intimacy expands.
I love it. I love it. You and Raven have love appointments, I think you call them. Yes.
Hmm.
And so you are
Mm-hmm.
actually consciously making time and space for intimacy, which is so
Mm-hmm.
cool. And a lot of people don't do that. Jamin and I, we call them love labs. And Jamin and I do this also. And I just have to say, like, there is another like mainstream myth that it's just gonna magically happen. You're just gonna like, get turned on at the exact same time, and you're gonna have, and like the quickie is gonna happen, or something's gonna magically happen, and everything will just like come together in some passionate fire, and that's how being in a relationship works. And in reality, it's not usually what happens beyond the first 3 to 6 months ish, is what I find. Especially not if there are
Mm-hmm.
children involved. Being parents or being busy professionals, it's just tough. And so I just want to introduce this idea that um, it takes intention and it takes setting time aside. And it's not like it's gonna be perfect, and it's not gonna be like wild, passionate, or successful every time, but that there is this love going into it. And it may be messy, and it does take practice, and letting your heart soften and letting your body soften and letting go of old stories and really just being present instead of thinking about your laundry list of things to do or all the people you haven't emailed yet, but really being together is super powerful. Can you speak into this just a little bit more? Like, if somebody's never really set aside time for like exploring their intimacy in a new way, how do you even get started?
Well, the way it gets started is first having clear, conscious communication with your partner. It's having the uncomfortable conversations of like, hey, okay, there's an elephant in the room. We haven't made love for a month. Like we're, and just really getting real with each other. And meaning getting real that sometimes in partnerships and relationships, one person might only want sex one time a month, and one person wants it every day. And that's actually their erotic blueprint. And there's nothing wrong with each side of that. But chances are there's probably going to create some challenges along the way because one person doesn't feel like their needs are getting met. Another person feels like the other person always wants sex. So the first step is clear, conscious communication where you actually get real with what you want and what you need with your
Mm,
partner. And sometimes those conversations are uncomfortable because you have to actually get real with your own needs and desires.
mhm,
Once that's there and you're like, okay, like there's something here, let's try to be more consciously connected in a place where we can say 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 4 p.m. we're going to come together, or whatever your work schedules are. If you're in Bali, you probably work, whatever it may be, and you have different schedules. But, whatever it is, and you're like, okay, 4 to 5 p.m., we're going to just meet in the bedroom. We're going to look eye to eye, and we're just going to be intimate. I love appointment. I love lab. I love that term. It doesn't mean that you need to have sex. It just means that all of the distractions are away. The kids are with the babysitter. The email and the notifications are turned off. All the stuff, and all you are is just simply being with each other in that time. I would recommend often in that first time, the first 20 to 30 minutes, don't go into penetrative sex. Just let your bodies meet, start to breathe together, start to see each other. There's so many different ways and modalities for couples and people to come together when they feel like intimacy is leaving the door. And at the end of the day, it takes work. It takes a desire to make a lasting difference. And if you're in a relationship and you're past the honeymoon phase, you're past the time when all the fire rockets are going off, and it's like, okay, and now you've landed. Maybe it's a year in, or 2 years, or whatever it is. Then you have to then sit down and say, okay, like I want to make love this amount of times today. Is it going to be in the morning when we wake up? Is it going to be in the evening? And really set aside time that's clear where both partners feel like their needs are being met. And that as well can also create compromise and create, stagnation and friction because I know, like with Raven, there's some requests that she requests of me that aren't, something I would 100% do, but I know that by doing it, it brings her joy. So I compromise a little bit to support her, and I know she does the same for me. So you find this place where compromise isn't something that's bad, it's actually something that supports the relationship. And by supporting the relationship, you then can break it down to having time of when it really matters to come together. Because I feel quite strongly couples that aren't making love and couples that aren't really connecting deeply at least once a week, maybe less than that, but there's usually elephants in the room that neither one of them really want to address, and all those elephants do is they get bigger and bigger and bigger. They form in the place of disease, of different issues in the body. It forms as a huge resentment that comes out when one of you is drunk, or the shit hits the fan and everything goes wild. All of this of love appointments, it's all just supporting individuals to have a system and process that allows love to flourish. And it also means that when the shit does hit the fan, you can break it down back to the fundamentals, to return eye to eye, to have the conscious conversation, to be clear with each other, and to find, is are we actually in resonance? There's a fair amount of couples, people that are trying to make it work. If you've been trying to make it work for 5 years, maybe it doesn't work, and just own that. I don't often, recommend couples to break up, but there's sometimes it's just necessary because the people are just crossing ships in the night, they're not meeting eye to eye. And as painful as it is, there's probably somebody out there who's going to meet you in the way that you want to be met, and to be actually honest and clear about that. As long as you're doing your due diligence and you're recognizing the places where your partner's triggering you, you're feeling that deeply and completely, and then returning to a place of love. If returning to that place of love, you're still not being continually met over and over and over again, then sometimes compatibility isn't present.
mm. Yeah, It's very, very true and very possible. I see it. Um, there's something that I want to speak into because I know what you're talking about with love appointments, and maybe not everybody does. And I highly recommend just checking out the work that you two do. And we'll talk about that and how they can find you in a minute. But just in general, for anybody who's listening, you're like, okay, so let me get this straight. I set aside 1 hour, maybe once Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever works for a schedule. So now I'm choosing 7:30 once the kids go to bed before I get too tired. So 7:30, 8:30, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We're both gonna show up in the bedroom, but we don't know, like, but we have a routine. We've got this recipe that's always worked. And you're saying not to do that. So then what? What the heck are we supposed to do? I said it, like, then I think the next thing that I watch people go to is if we don't have the recipe, then we'll just start talking. And the talking will lead us to probably some sort of fight or disconnect because that's more comfortable than being in the discomfort of sitting here on the bed together for, for 60 minutes, right? So it's like, can you give us a little bit more hand holding of, okay, 7:30 has arrived. We both walk into the room. Now what?
7:30 has arrived. The candles have been lit. The chocolate is next to the bed.
Ooh, I
You're
like this.
wearing your beautiful negligee. The man has his beautiful robe on. Coconut oil is present, or a beautiful
Yes.
body butter ready to be displayed all over the body. And you meet and you sit in front of each other and you first just bring some eye gazing present. I know it's one of those tantric things all those weird people that eye gaze. It actually is the gateway into the soul when you can look into your beloved's eye and just feel all of the different stories. You might be mad at him or her from 2 hours ago when they forgot to make food for the children, and whatever it may be. You just watch and observe all of these stories and you don't go into conversation. This hour, 2 hour time period is not one of negotiating. If there's clear boundaries and maybe the woman initially or the man, like they don't want penetration, if there's very clear boundaries that have to be communicated, do that initially and then just go into a place beyond words. Now when I say beyond words, that means that sounds are very welcome. The sounds of
Mm,
pleasure are beautiful. The sounds of pain are beautiful. Whatever is present, but hold that container for that given amount of time. You might run into a situation where one of you wants to run out the door and run and hide. Just stay there. Let all of the stuff that's there, let it burn, let it vibrate, let it move through you, and know that at the center of your connection, love is present. So you sit eye to eye. Maybe there's some eye gazing, maybe there's light, gentle touch. You could, begin to incorporate some tantric massage. You can, just you can do some gazing of each other's bodies. There's such a many different modalities, but let your intuition guide you. Don't go chasing for trying to get inside of her. Don't go chasing to, any particular way. You're melting into the mystery that's alive when two people become fully present, completely there, and maybe you get wildly out of control. Who knows? But all you know is you're there with each other at this amount of time without an agenda.
mm,
And you be in the erotic innocence of it. Like so many times, because we have this normal, I'm going to do this to you here, and you're going to do this to me here, and then we get off, and then it's like, oh. And that might be what happens the first time. And then you're like, well, didn't quite work out that well this well. So, then the next time you get to be like, okay, we did that same pattern that we've done for the last 3 years together. Let's try something new. It's gonna feel awkward. It's gonna feel strange. It's gonna feel like, oh, what? This is. I need something to distract. Stay present. If there's emotion that rises, let yourself feel. Sexual energy is going to clear through anything that's not love and above in your system. And when
mm,
sexual energy is present, tears might come up, anger might come up, massive levels of pleasure and bliss might come up. All of it might be there, and that's okay. And that also, a very strong tip, especially for men, when you're entering a woman, if let's say you get to that point in the love appointment and emotions and tears come flooding through her system, You don't go to her and say, "Oh my God, what's wrong with you? Can I fix you? How do I make you stop crying?" A woman's tears are absolutely divine. That's actually life force that's moving through her body. And all you're going to do is just hold her and be there with that. I love it when Raven
Oh my
cries.
God. Preach
It's
it. Preach
sexy and
it.
hot.
I when I am crying during sex, I know I've reached like my heaven. And when it's in partnership with somebody who just holds it, right? Who isn't like, oh my God,
Mm,
I do something wrong. Like they can just hold it and see that I am in my place, right? It's so juicy. I'm like, yes, 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 that. So thank
mhm.
you for saying that. There are two other things that I want to say that I've come from your work, you and Raven's work, that has been really profound for me. Um, Lots of things, but two of them. One of them has been this asking, and this ask like when a man asks to penetrate. Because I think so many women have just been
Mm,
penetrated, and it depends on your relationship, and depend like sometimes you just know your intuition is there, like she's ready, right? Because you've done this warm up and she's really like she's almost like begging, or maybe she is begging you, right? And but if she's not, then there's something really powerful in asking. Are you ready to be penetrated? May I penetrate you? May I
mhm,
go inside of you? Right? There's just something really powerful there that I don't think
mhm,
men understand, how often women have had that taken from them and how it's just become the norm in many ways. And so I just want to say, like, wow, 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 that was really powerful to even learn that that's a tool to try. And you won't need it all the time, but to gift a woman that very, very clear choice can be really amazing in ways she might not even know of. Like there were things I was like, whoa, I didn't know that was there. Cool. Uh, and the other thing that I really, really love is you were talking about letting everything be. And there are three words that I think in one of your workshops you said: breath, sound, and movement. You can just add breath, sound, and movement to
mm,
everything. So when the pain of whatever is coming up, when the sadness, when the grief, when the anger, when the whatever is coming through is happening, instead of clamping down and being like, don't show any emotions, this isn't real, push it away. Instead, just breathe into it. Like, and maybe you want to make some sounds, maybe you want to cry, maybe you just want to move your body, maybe you want to hit a pillow, whatever it may be. But adding that breath, sound, and movement to anything in the bedroom, in life in general, things just get so much juicier. You like, for me, I'm like, oh, now how do I take this epic orgasm, which I didn't think it'd get any better, and I'm going to add even more breath, sound, and movement. And watch out, world, watch out, universe, I am somewhere else that I didn't even expect to be. And that doesn't matter on your sex, right? It's like, try adding this and see what happens when you give yourself more release and more freedom. So there
mhm,
we
mhm.
go.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Two very, very important key points for sure.
Anyways, I just realized the time. I'm like, oh, Aaron, I could talk
Mm.
with you for days. Before we close up, before we close up, are there any other final points you want to share with people listening on relationship remix about intimacy, connection, anything around these things?
I'd say more than anything, just, slow down enough to listen to your body. There's an infinite wisdom in our body that in our day-to-day world is not necessarily highly promoted. We live in a world that's intellect, mental, consciousness based. And when we enter into the mystery of the body's knowledge and awareness and what feels good and what doesn't, then yeah, there's a whole world of possibilities that the mind can never quite conceive. So be willing to dive into the mystery of your body and see where you can meet that in a place of the heart.
Yes, so good, so good. Aaron, how do we find you? How do we follow you? How do we get more involved in your world?
Yeah. So Raven and I run Embodied Awakening Academy. You can go to embodiedawakeningacademy.com, see all of our courses, online courses, retreats. We have a retreat coming up here in Bali at the end of May. I run work specifically for men, both online courses, coaching, as well as retreats. I have one in Bali coming up the beginning of July, and then I'll also be doing one in the U.S. this summer. So, and that's really a deep dive into, it's called the initiation journey. It's a deep feminine initiation and masculine power journey into all the issues and taboos and challenges inside of being a male body and all the stuff. There's no stone that doesn't go unturned, and it's from what I know in men's work out there. It's there's not a lot of people going to that degree. So
Wow.
yeah, and if you want, especially more around intimacy and that, I've had an online course up now for probably 5, 6 years, way before COVID times, called A Conscious Man's Guide to the Bedroom, which is a
Mm.
super foundational, fundamental, learn the building blocks so you can become a better lover. And you just go to a man's guide to the bedroom.com. All the information's there.
So good. So good. And we'll post all these links too. But thank you so much, Aaron. You are amazing. Absolutely amazing. I really appreciate you being here and sharing your knowledge and your love and your passion with all of us. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And
Thank
yeah.
you.
All right. Bye.